Action. All right, guys, welcome to the Rumikay Talks podcast. And today we have a guest, Jeremy Harris, a cinematographer. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This is a super honor of mine, man. You're an amazing human being, man. I love you so much, and that you asked me to be here. It's quite special.
Where are you calling from right now?
Oh, from Washington, D.C., born and raised, home.
Nice. Is it hot? Or like right now I'm sitting in California sweating, wiping off my forehead.
Oh, yeah. I have the air conditioning blasting right now in the house because it's really hot here, and it's so humid here. It's something like we've never felt here before, man, and it's it's a doozy.
All right, so let's dive into today's conversation. I want to know a little bit more about young Jeremy. What happened? When was the moment when you decided to pursue a career in filmmaking?
Young Jeremy, he's mostly interested in painting and in watching films. My mother was a huge influence on the film side of it. My brother was an even bigger inspiration on the painting side of it. But it wasn't until maybe a few years before actually you and I had met that I wanted to find a way to get back to those painting roots. But after not painting for a long time, you kind of gotta work your way back in, and the flow of it just didn't feel the same. And I felt like maybe it was another way or another medium to express that. And as always, kind of followed my brother into photography a little bit, but that I felt like that wasn't exactly the pinpoint on it. And then following, which could be another brother of mine, a close friend of ours, Joseph, who's a director into film school, was the moment I realized that cinematography was that way of being able to express myself in that painterly fashion, in that manner. So it took me a little bit longer in life. I think that was just more of I would chalk it up to say more of a time of learning and understanding and appreciating films and filmmaking before I was able to actually step foot in that world and be able to express myself in that manner.
Were there any particular cinematographers or movies that inspired you when you were young, or when you decided to become a cinematographer around that time?
I would say seeing Spike Lee and hearing him speak about his cinematographer, Ernest Dickerson, and it really gave me insight that there was a human being behind that. And, it was great to see someone that, looked like Spike Lee or looked like me. And the older I got and the more I delved into the true understanding of it and the people around it, I feel as though, especially being from Washington, D.C., and hearing about this young guy that went to Howard University, that is doing cinematography and really, growing with it was Bradford Young. Hear his name in the streets of D.C. and see some of his films that he was putting out because he went to Howard University, which is a very big school here, and very prestigious school for filmmaking. Like some of the top, filmmakers and actors that all went to that school. I wish, I was cool enough that had went to that school or known enough by that time, but Bradford Young. And I would also say I was a big fan of Steve McQueen's work. So his cinematographer, Sean Bobbitt, was a huge inspiration to me because I needed something to ground me in it, because I thought, so big of the world of cinematography and so intimidated by it. But watching Sean Bobbitt's work and watching him talk about it and listening to his background and where he came from and how it was so similar to mine made me feel like I was able to, maybe I could miss a few things in understanding lighting here or not be as confident here or there in this part of camera. But if you went at it with, your heart and you were able to just understand, the way the world works, the way that what the sun gives you, what the night gives you, or anything in that matter, and you're able to tell your story, it doesn't really matter the apparatus. It just means, to use your brain and your heart in it. So I kind of took to those two guys first, and I would, obviously I would be remiss without mentioning Roger Deakins, I think that's kind of like, that's like speaking about Michael Jordan playing basketball. You have to say Roger Deakins. So yeah, he was an enormous, inspiration to me. Yeah.
When was the first time that you made a movie? It could be like something very simple, or maybe it was at film school. What was your first experience of actually filming with the camera?
I was in undergraduate school. I was, finally, it took me into my junior year of college to figure out, what I wanted to do. So I found that direction. I chose my major. It was communication arts, and there was a class of basically teaching me how to run a TV studio, or even the jobs on a sitcom show. And each and every day, everyone would learn a bit of the technical director, the camera person, the director, the assistant, all those jobs each and every day. And yeah, that was one of my first moments of being behind the camera. One of my close friends who I actually played on the football team with at that school, he wrote a nice, cool little sitcom. And we went in there and we shot it. And we did a simple like 3-camera setup, like it was a full-on, TV studio. And the first time I did it, I was the technical director because I wanted to really learn it. At that point in time, I wasn't really fascinated with cameras like I am now. It's really intimidating, even the one at the studio, even with the time that we got to learn around it. But, after long, and when that moment in time came up for us to actually, roll cameras for the first time and actually have it be, a production for that very first time in my life, I was pretty nervous. But, when we got to going, I actually ended up being the camera operator on the show, the main camera operator on the show. And that was kind of like the first time I really picked up a camera and took part, in a production like that. I mean, when I was a kid, I'd always mess around with my brother's 35 millimeter photography cameras. I was never really a photograph or photography person. I was always a sketcher and a painter growing up. So it started to kick in, around that time in college. My mother was a television broadcast editor for a very long time. But even that would kind of, would scare me out of it, because when I would go to the studios, I would see the guys and the women all, moving the cameras around and all. It was so intimidating, but once I got into college and took those courses and, utilizing the old football attitude that you kind of just got to go into it, I was able to just hop on that camera and I felt a different synergy at that moment in time. So I guess, after a while, so a few years later, it will become, something I would fall in love with.
Nice. So what are the top lessons that you learned from studying filmmaking, studying media, studying communications?
I think with me, just overall in life, I've been a very instinctive person. And for me, when it comes to filmmaking, you can always either second guess or double think or overthink in general. And in a lot of moments, early on, I was finding myself double thinking everything, trying to make sure everything was perfect, or, if I understood everything. A lot of times I was realizing that, if I was just remaining me, just being instinctive in certain moments, and, the first thing that comes to your mind creatively, if I can meld that with the knowledge of the game and the ins and outs and the small tinkerings of things, and understanding camera and understanding lighting and how they can apply to how you want to use it. If I could meld those two things together, I can think of a great shot on instinct. And then I also knew how to execute those same ideas, then I would be able to feel that comfort in what I was doing, being around so many people once getting into the industry that were just, fantastic and brilliant and light years ahead of me. I needed something to hold that comfort. So being able to instinctively say, oh, maybe, I have an idea for this shot, or I just have an idea in general. If I knew that I had enough time to gain that knowledge to where I can tap both of those together, and I can know how to exactly create that in front of camera, because, when I was a kid and those instincts kicked in, it just took, me and my pen or me and my paintbrush. Whereas now, you have an idea, and I have to look over to those 9 people that's, in the camera crew and the camera, relay that and translate that same idea, and then look to my left, and my grip and my gaffers are over there, getting ready and seeing, what's going on, and I have to see, what lights I have to tell this very specific story. If I have that idea and I know that, hey, this specific light can do that, or I have trust enough to ask my gaffer, for a specific thing that can translate to them being able to help portray that idea, then it gave me, even more comfort in that, and even now I'm still discovering myself and building how exactly that painting looks, on camera. But those little simple things and the command of it gave me a lot more confident to be able to go with my instincts and feel as though that I am, a cinematographer or a filmmaker, because it can be very, very hard.
Yeah, well, let's dive into the feature film that you worked on, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul. You have worked with Anthony Richmond, the DP, the famous DP who shot The Beatles, among various other projects. How lessons that you learned at film school and in your life were useful during that experience, and what did you learn on that set?
Wow, yeah, that was at that point in time. I had been on a few solid size sets while I was living in California, post film school, with a lot of people around the area and jobs that you get. But at that very moment, that was something that was kind of like a gift in the making. I guess to get to somewhat of a backstory behind it, Anthony Richmond, who was the cinematographer on that film that you were mentioning, he's our chair, the lead, at our in our cinematography department at New York Film Academy. After a while of the whole year just bugging his mind and really talking to him and learning a lot from him, mostly because, as a kid growing up, I was a baseball kid, and Sandlot is it's a staple, for baseball kids. And lo and behold, as I got older and met him, I realized he was a cinematographer on that film, and who would have known that would have lined up that what I wanted to be for the rest of my life, and one of my favorite films, and something that was pivotal in me growing up as a human being, as a child, would be, shot by the same person who would teach me cinematography, this art, with all that knowledge, and also be the same person who would walk up to me and say, hey, I have this feature I'm shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. Would you want to come with me? And it was mostly just as a shadow, but it was like it was a brilliant opportunity. I'd never, I think the budget on that film was maybe like 40 to 50 million, maybe even more. But to just see those cogs and everything moving at that level and that speed was just brilliant. At the same time, giving all the credit to Tony, knowing that, maybe this may not be the exact film you want to go on and go forth, or the specific genre, but there's elements and there's things here that you can gain knowledge while being here. And as I was saying before, a lot of things that I learned from him, but as myself growing up, is just that you can learn so that those instincts, when they come in, maybe it might not be, what you're shooting may not be a kid, running around with his parents, in his parents' caravan, having fun and adventure, but, how the camera moves specifically, or, being able to place a camera within the vehicle and having the knowledge of what you need to do that, and understanding certain angles, regardless of the subject matter, is something that you need to know as a cinematographer, and getting an opportunity to meet everyone on that crew who has so many experiences on the list of films that you can go through that you're a fan of, so that opportunity of not only literally watching, one of my favorite cinematographers, and someone who, you subconsciously growing up falling in love with, actually watching them do the work, kind of going back to the basketball analogy. It's kind of like, walking into a gym and watching Michael Jordan, shoot the basketball. It's like, wow, man, I'm here, this human being who, like you said, Men of Honor, Sandlot, so many great films, and I'm standing here side by side with him, and any question I could ask, it was just go, just ask, and it's one of the best experiences of my life because it gave me a lot of guidance and confidence even more when I left there and going into shooting my own films.
Is there a particular moment from that set that you can remember that was fun or like weird or was a revelation to you? Anything at all?
On the first few days, because there's so many people, I think the first day there was like, walking up, pulling up on set, and you see 150 people outside. You're like, whoa, like I'm sifting through people to find Tony himself. But as the days go on, and we're at this with this restaurant that they turned into this kids like play place, and there's kids everywhere screaming. There's crew members everywhere that's going crazy because there's kids screaming everywhere, and they're shooting a scene in this little ball pen that these like 20 some odd kids are in, and there's the camera operators are moving around, and I think what settled my mind in not only to that at the end of the day, when it's said and done, all of it's filmmaking, but it's also became less intimidating of having that command as a cinematographer because, as things are going on, Tony turns around, he's like, where's the C camera, mate? And the camera wasn't out, we weren't really using it, and, they grabbed it for him, he took it, and, he's knee deep in playpen balls with these kids running around, and he's, operating the camera himself, getting shots too. And it's nothing fancy, and he's just doing it to get more shots, to get variations of it. And as I'm watching him, Tony's at that point in time, Tony's almost an 80-year-old man, but to see him in the action, in the work, and to see it not as this big mystery as we all can tend to see it, and it still is that, it's a mystery how some of these films look and the things that people can come up with. But to see your mentor, who is a spry 80-year-old man, literally in there in a ball pit with these chaotic kids going around, and he's getting these shots, and he's just smiling ear to ear because he loves it. That kind of demystified everything for me, and it made me trust those instincts even more. I'm like, if it's that simple, if it's if it none of that stuff was storyboarded, none of that stuff was in the script. But it's those instincts to add those things to it, and also just have that ability to say, you know what, man, if I'm 80 and I can go hop in here and one of these kids could knock me over, that that could be it. But no, he's in there. It's the adventure, and I'm 100% sure, and especially from the stories that he's told me, through his career and the things that he did do, across so many films that we've seen, and the risk that he did take, like I'm witnessing what was someone who at my age was doing that same thing, but he was with the Beatles, or he was with David Bowie, or he was shooting Men of Honor, like he was taking those same risks, and going out and getting it, man. And it just gave me even more and more confidence to do it, because cinematography in that very specific position is a very hard thing to learn and a hard thing to apply. So before applying it and really, considering yourself to be a cinematographer, I think there's a lot to learn and a lot of experience to gain. And I really appreciate him for collectively putting all of that almost in one big opportunity for me that really, set me off and going forward. Because after that, I ended up, post then I've shot maybe 4 features, I think, at this point in time, and they're nothing at that level just yet. But, that confidence means a lot when you're a cinematographer. Confidence is key.
Were there any perks or bonuses you got from working on that movie after everything was over?
Oh, yeah. I got a really nice water bottle that I held on to. That's a joke. I made a lot of contacts from that shoot, from a lot of people that still work in the film industry. I had a big opportunity to work a few union gigs post that. I got to learn a lot about camera and camera assisting from a young man who not young. He's about 60-year-old man, but his name is Emil Hampton, and he was a camera assistant on so many films. And his biggest film, I think, that anyone would recognize, he was a camera assistant on the Titanic.
Oh
So
wow.
that
Hmm.
opportunity to get to work on another feature and to at a different capacity, but to learn from another human being who that's a pretty big thing. And I would have never known that someone who looks like me was a camera assistant on such a huge film. At that point in time, that wasn't a thing I could really fathom. But getting to know him and understanding him, and him teaching me how to navigate the industry, and then how to become you. And it was a lot of things that I felt that I was getting from Tony, but from another human being in another position, that as a cinematographer you really have to know and understand and appreciate your camera assistant. So to be able to get that time with someone who has done it and is someone who's on that ultimate level was even more in that level of appreciation for crew and what they can bring to you. And for those experiences, that was another thing that kind of really was a plus, from that experience with Tony on that film.
How do you build your crew? Like when it comes to making a movie, how do you build your cinematography department, so to speak?
It's fairly simple. A lot of times it's the second you realize or inform what size crew you'll have or what you'll be capable of doing, then you can kind of judge with who you choose for your crew. A lot of times, once it could be one person. It could go from one person to eight to 20, depending on the size. And at that point in time, once you can either you can make calls and see who's available, or for me, I kind of assess who's who does what best, and then I'll call everybody. But I kind of want to at least have a guide to, like, if I pair up you know this person with this person on this camera, this will definitely meld better because they're super fast, they're super ready, they're always on the go. And this person, no matter what the circumstances is, they're really great at pulling focus during extreme circumstances. And I know, okay, I have a film with a ton of handheld and it's going to be flying around, and I know maybe they might be better for it. But I could call everybody I know and they may not be available, and then you kind of have to select by that. But always selecting who would be best fit for the job, not only with who they are and their abilities, but their natural abilities to pick up on what you're trying to translate and bring to life within the film. You might have two or three friends that are, or people that that are gaffers, and you're going into a sci-fi film. Well, maybe one of them has the experience, but maybe this sci-fi film might be shot a bit differently than your normal sci-fi film. Maybe it might be more dramatic. And so maybe looking over towards Edgar and saying, "Hey, Edgar, would you mind?" And then picking up on that. So it's an easy process, but it's not really that easy. But I would say it's easy because if you're a cinematographer, you really pick up on those things first, especially with people who you work with so much. But you kind of can pick up on those things with people you've never met before, and you're meeting them for one time, or you've seen their work and you just want to work with them. You can always pick up on the synergy or someone's abilities or their creative eye, depending on exactly what it is that you're shooting and creating.
How do you search for cinematography gigs? What is the process finding new projects to work on? Where do you find them? Do you use any particular online tools, or what are your methods?
I'm really selective about the gigs I choose at this point in time, which I feel like is a good thing. One way, well, my best friend who's a director, he I would say once every 2 or 3 years, he gets an idea, and because we're so close, because we're best friends, our route with that is just kind of getting together and creating it right then and there without any extra avenues or anything or such. But as a cinematographer, away from those situations, one of the main sources I use is a website called Mandy.com. That's a pretty huge help for that a lot of filmmakers use. A lot of times you can pick up on some really, really, really interesting gigs there. There can be global, can be right here in DC, can be in New York, can be close, and you get to see what you get to have a preview of what the person is shooting, so you can understand, and you can be selective with what you want to apply to, and that just like any job, that doesn't make you perfect for anything or qualify you for everything, but I think that's a good method. I've picked up on a few cinematography gigs that I really enjoyed through that process, and met a lot of people on sets through that website. And other than that, for the most part, a few film groups that I'm a part of on like Facebook and like Instagram and such, as well as I also freelance for a company called Condé Nast. I do a lot of cinematography through that company for brands like Vogue and Bon Appetit magazine and things like that. So those are kind of like the few ways I dart in and out of doors to find cinematography gigs. Yeah.
Nice. So let's chat a little bit about failures. Is there a particular failure that you'd like to share and that later turned into some form of success?
I don't think there's ever really any or a big failure I can recall. But I will say to that point, I grew up a person that did not fear failure, because I was kind of the person that enjoyed being in high pressure situations or bigger situations. I didn't mind it. When I played sports, I was never remotely the the best person on the field or even the hardest worker, but being in those moments, I've been on baseball fields with people who play in the majors now, football field with people who play, in the big leagues now, or, once I got started in this industry, I was on the other side of a bunch of red carpets of any and all the greatest actors and celebrities you can find. And, I noticed that I never really got nervous in anything, and I always understood that I was never the best at anything. I picked up on things decently, but I always needed time with everything I needed to learn. And for me, the only thing that could really help control that time was understanding failure. I'm saying, I'm going to go here and there's going to be a moment where the light is in the wrong spot, or there's going to be a moment here where, I drew up a storyboard and it just didn't fit, or, anything in that manner as you were learning this process, or, putting a tape marker down in the wrong spot, or, maybe making a mistake with the media that goes in and out of camera and you lose a clip or two like that. Knowing and understanding that, hey man, I have plenty of friends and plenty of people that I work with that are, machines when it comes to filmmaking or art or anything, and even growing up, I just, everything I needed to do was time based, with, it would take the average person, a minute or two, but, if it took Jeremy an hour or two, sometimes it might be necessary to take that time. And in that process, trying it and testing it and getting those experiments out, saying, hey, I could fall flat on my face, but, I've always been the kind of person that you can see me smiling while I'm flat on my face, so that's fine. I can get up and try again. And that second or third time, I understand what what mistake I made or what that failure was, and going back and fixing it, because I know there's a long haul and a long process to everything that's worth it, especially, so not being afraid to fail and getting that sense of failing and, the world not falling or crashing behind you, literally, makes you understand, all right, that's fine. That's fine. If I take 2 steps back here, I know that it'll help me take 4 steps forward later. So I was fine with those 2 steps back, taking 2 steps back while everyone else was already, they'd already jumped out the blocks they were already going, I can take those 2 steps back, think about it a second, and it would buy me time to catch up and be, where I want to be or who I want to be, or, in whatever manner you would have.
These are some good pieces of wisdom I'm gonna apply in my life now. That's pretty good. Deep cuts. Yeah. So let's talk about Barbie versus Oppenheimer. So what do you think? What are your predictions? Are you going on a double feature? Tell me everything.
Yes. I'm definitely going on a double feature. I have tickets already to see Oppenheimer at the Lincoln Square with a good friend of mine who I actually just shot a feature with in December. We're gonna go see it in Lowe's Lincoln Square. Big old beautiful IMAX, but right
true
before that,
IMAX.
I'm going to see. Yeah, true. And it was before, but we changed tickets, so that it's so crazy. Like the tickets sell out so fast, especially in that theater. So we got a 10:30 showing, but I'm going to see Barbie later on that night, which I am extremely excited for as well. Like those combinations of films, I haven't been excited for, like a combination of back-to-back films like that, especially on the same day. That's amazing, man. I'm so excited. I love theater experiences, and Christopher Nolan definitely always gives me just the best theater experiences. And Greta Gerwig, I always love her stories. Like, she's a huge motivation for me, especially in her first film, Frances Ha. And when it comes to like the cinematography of that film, that was kind of one of my biggest inspirations for one of the early features I shot. It being like a black and white, simple mumblecore film with that essence of it. And just watching her go forward now, and to see her take on something like this that has like the entire world going crazy for it. So I'm super excited. So excited.
Which movie you think will succeed in box office more?
Oh man, I'm going to say Barbie, because I think Christopher Nolan makes some of the biggest, most beautiful films, and there's big names in that film, but there's like huge names in Barbie, and then the fact that it's Barbie, like, that's like the buzz for it, even for kids that can't remotely watch the movie, it's like huge. So I think just from the fact that it's Barbie is going to make like a lot of money. It's going to be a really big success. I mean, you also have, you got everyone that's in it, but it's led by Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie. I think everyone loves those two, so it's going to be, gonna be huge.
Yeah, it's the whole phenomenon right now. All the girls dressing up and going to the premiere like this. Like my wife will gonna go in a dress with her girlfriends to watch the premiere, while I'll be watching Oppenheimer in the same theater. Yeah, that will be a fun experience. I plan to watch Oppenheimer probably twice. First time I'm watching it in Dolby Cinema, because I love Dolby Cinema. I love the quality of the image. And second time I'm gonna watch it in true IMAX and Universal CityWalk, because it has the big IMAX. Yeah.
I love that place. That's one of the best theaters in the world. I love that theater.
Nice. Yeah. So let's talk about feature films versus TV shows. Which one do you think is better as a job, let's say as a cinematographer, and what do you think is the future of both?
I would say you probably make more consistent money off of TV shows as a cinematographer. I think you may have a lot more command. I think on television, for me personally, I love television, but it's something about going to the movies and seeing your favorite movie up on that screen that connected me to cinematography in a different way. Like being able to create those images that you see on that Dolby Cinema screen, it's something that, it changes me, whether or not it could be a Star Wars film or it could be Moonlight. Seeing it up there is something. It's a totally different experience for me. So it's kind of hard to choose. Yeah, I think you can have success at both. I think you maybe depending on what you're shooting, you'd have more artistic reign on a feature. Um, and everything is time pressured in this industry, but I feel like you would have a lot more restraints and a lot less time on your hands as a cinematographer in the television world. A lot of things have to be really, 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 really quick. So, but you know, but they are really merging together now. Like not even now. I would say like maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, there's like well, even earlier than that, there's an advent of a lot of television shows that started to feel and look and be shot just like films. You could take them and just put them up in the theater, and that's kind of what people are doing now. You have your favorite shows and just go buy a nice big old TV, nice surround sound speakers, and you're right there. And you see it now with every single show. Almost every single show now is just shot so beautifully. Now you can rarely find just a simple show that's just up on television. Everything is shot so beautifully now.
What are your thoughts on Apple Vision Pro, the new headset from Apple? Do you think it will replace movie theaters if it's as good as they promote it to be?
That's a hard one to answer. Replace completely? I think it'll have, if it works, if it really, really works and it gives us a different experience as human beings, that we can really actually say, wow, this is the new experience and this is the way to go. This is the innovation that, we got right. I hope it doesn't. But it's also, even through COVID, we saw, and the changes and advancement of TV, you see how much easier it is to stay home and almost get that same exact entertainment. And if this is anything close to what it can possibly be, then, you can stand in the middle of the street, or you can stand in a movie theater with 400 people, and with those things on, the experience is out of this world. So Brandon wouldn't replace it, but I think it would probably hurt the theater industry, because it'd be another avenue of keeping everyone at home or wherever they are respectively, and not in the theater.
Yeah, I think it also, if it works as they say, there will be more demand for good feature films, kind of like back in the days. Because right now it seems like all theater movies are like Barbie versus Oppenheimer, and all other films like Past Lives, for example, I watched recently with my wife. It was in theaters, but I don't think a lot of people went to watch it in theater. That's the thing. But this thing may allow to watch those films in a theater-like experience, because they have kind of like surround sound. You can stretch your screen in front of you. So that could be a good side of it, I guess. But until everyone is able to afford it, it probably will take at least 5 or 10 years. Because they predict it's going to be around $3,500 per headset. And every single person needs to have it. Individual experience. Yeah.
Yeah, but if it works, then yeah, everyone will be.
And probably you can combine them with other people. Like, for example, we can, like you in Maryland, I'm here, and we can go watch a movie together in a theater-like environment via our headsets, Or even this phone call could be like a VR experience in and of itself.
Yeah.
That's crazy when you start thinking about the possibilities. The possibilities.
Yeah. Things are changing really fast, man, and it's interesting to see.
Yeah, life. The world moved on.
Yeah.
So this is the question that I ask my guests towards the end of the interview. If you're an extraterrestrial from a perfect world, when everything is beautiful and organized, and now you're visiting our world with all of its issues and problems and everything in between, what would be one thing that you'd fix, that you'd focus on fixing?
Wow, that's a You're asking me like, what's the key to life or something like that? What's the meaning of life?
I don't ask you to fix everything. I just ask what would be the
Yeah,
one thing that you would be most interested in fixing. And you don't need to know the how you're gonna do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
What else?
I guess not to go, to get too deep or, to go too strong at anything. But I mean, I'll say, it's, I think for me, in my experience in life, when people or human beings are around each other, when there's a level of respect for no matter who's in the area, no matter who's near you, when there's a equal level of respect for everyone, everything seems to run smoothly. There's no issues, in any room I've ever been in, any program or anything I participated in. When it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people around, and you can look at that person who's to your left, you can look at that person to your right, and understand what they're doing here, or understand their situation, or understand that you're just simply about to do something together. Everything goes smoothly. So it's a. I think if I came here as an extraterrestrial with a big bulbous finger and a bag of Reese's Pieces in my back pocket. I think I would say, hey everybody, let's just understand and respect each other, and that's the key right there.
Beautiful. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Could be anything at all. Like to share where people can find you.
I have to do a lot better with the world in social media. Kind of like somewhat of a closing person with that, and not really an extrovert at all. I'm super introverted, especially getting older now. But I would say, yeah. Well, I'm gonna do better with that stuff. But my Instagram is my full name, Jeremy Martin Harris. And I should actually have my full cinematography website going once this one particular film that I have that's in post production I really can't put out into the world until it's finished, but people see that and on there, and I would just say look out for more work of mine, and I'm excited to continue to grow and take on even bigger projects in this world of cinematography that I fell in love with, and more importantly, making some of the best films with one of my closest friends. Wink, wink, wink. I love making films with them. So I'm sure that'll be very, very soon, and that'll definitely hit a nice little satisfaction meter for filmmaking once that comes together.
Nice. All right. And now we arrive at the final question of Rumikay Talks. And this is obsession of the week. For example, it could be anything. It could be your favorite pizza, your favorite movie, or anything in between. My obsession of the week, for example, is plants. And I'm obsessed with house plants. I even start naming them. And there's this app, Planta, which I use to keep track when you need to water them or like repot or do like other things. And for example, I just got a notification, water Shakira. Shakira is one of my plants. It really became like a serious obsession this week. So, what is your obsession?
Oh man, topical, I guess, between us, but anytime we draw near to a film that there's a cinematographer that I really love, or a cinematographer and director collaboration that I really love is coming out, and Hoyte van Hoytema and Chris Nolan with Oppenheimer is, I love that work between the two of them. So I would say I've been on SHOTDECK a lot this week, just looking over their work on past things, and I rewatched Interstellar 2 days ago. So my obsession of the week is definitely going to be like a lot of research into the cinematography of Oppenheimer, even deeper into what's already been said, and even deeper into because everyone knows about the IMAX and and all that. But like, as a cinematographer, like what lenses they shot on, how they shot, select they shots, and actually hearing, from the cinematographer and all that stuff before the film happens and all that lead up, man. I'm gonna just be like a 3-year-old and a kid in the theater once it starts.
Yeah. And this episode will air on July 21st, so when I'm going to watch Oppenheimer.
Nice. So I get to watch this. I'm going on the 22nd or 23rd. Yeah.
It's like Saturday or Sunday. Yeah.
So it's gonna be like everyone's gonna be there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for coming today to chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.